Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The top global story this evening, American broadcaster Fox News has settled the defamation suit with Dominion Voting Systems for nearly $800 million. Dominion Voting Systems, a company that produces and sells electronic voting hardware, had claimed that Fox News had aired false information about the company's voting machines during the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Dominion had initially sought $1.6 billion from Fox for intentionally and falsely blaming the company for Donald Trump's loss in the presidential election. However, Fox maintained that the channel was only reporting on Donald Trump's allegations and was not supporting it, and that its coverage was protected under the constitutional free speech rights. CNBC's Iman Zavers gets us more on this big settlement.
In the end, it was clear that Fox just didn't want to go to trial here in Wilmington, Delaware, but it took until after the jury had been impaneled and the presiding judge had given them their first instructions until that deal, which was worth more than $787 million, could finally get done. And as a result of that, media mogul Rupert Murdoch will not have to testify here about his TV network's conduct before a jury of his peers. I was in the hallway outside the holding room in the tense moments just before that announcement was made. I could see one of the co-founders of the private equity firm Staple Street Capital that owns Dominion Voting Systems break into a huge smile as he talked to the Dominion legal team in those moments just before the deal was announced publicly. Fox's legal team left the courthouse after the deal in silence, declining to answer questions from reporters here, but the company did issue a statement saying this: "We acknowledge the court's rulings finding certain claims about Dominion to be false. This settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards." By contrast, Dominion's team headed straight for the microphones here, saying truth matters and lies have consequences. Afterward, I asked Dominion attorney Justin Nelson what comes next for him. He told me Dominion is working on 6 other cases, including against conservative news organizations Newsmax and One America News, Trump supporter Mike Lindell, and Trump 2020 attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell.
I think what this really sends a message is that we will be holding people accountable for lies. And I think what really is so important about today is really for the first time across any litigation is that people are being held accountable for the lies of the 2020 election.
Another voting systems company, Smartmatic, has a lawsuit pending against Fox News as well, this one asking for $2.7 billion in damages. Smartmatic put out a statement in the wake of the settlement with Dominion saying this: Dominion's litigation exposed some of the misconduct and damage caused by Fox's disinformation campaign. Smartmatic will expose the rest. Ultimately, it may be the case that this Dominion settlement today just sort of made a market, set a price out there for some of these other cases to follow. This could be more like the beginning than the end of this for Fox News.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us with that report. Let me now go across to our other big story that we are tracking. Meta employees are staring at layoffs Wednesday. The tech giant is likely to implement a fresh round of job cuts, the one that the tech giant had announced in March. This would be the second round of job cuts after close to 11,000 employees had been fired in November. Kanishka Sarkar joins us. Kanishka, what's in store for India employees?
Right. My colleague Nishtha Pandey and I have picked up from multiple people in the know that Meta is going to begin its latest round of job cuts starting as early as today. Though CNBC-TV18 is awaiting an official confirmation from Meta and inputs on the detailed impact, several employees have told us that the buzz about April 19 is being called the D-Day. Another source has said that employees at mid-senior levels will be notified about layoffs this week, while those in leadership roles could face the axe next week. The Washington Post has also seen an internal memo by the HR head informing about the job cuts. However, employees in India tell us that they have not received any official communication so far. According to the Washington Post, divisions that will be affected include teams working on Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, and the virtual reality division, Reality Labs, among others. It must be noted that last month, Mark Zuckerberg had announced that Meta would implement another 10,000 job cuts after it laid off 11,000 employees, or 13% of the company's workforce, in 2022.
Thanks, Kanishka, for joining us. But there are more layoffs looming in the tech space. Disney will begin implementing its planned layoffs starting next week. Ritu Singh brings us more.
Well, tough macro conditions continue to cost thousands of employees their jobs across the world in 2023 as well. And apart from the large round of layoffs announced at Meta, Amazon is undergoing the largest layoff in its 29-year-old history after it went on a hiring spree during the pandemic. Now, CNBC has reported that Amazon began laying off some of its employees in the advertising unit on Tuesday, although the total number could not be ascertained. These are part of the previously announced job cuts, which are expected to affect 9,000 employees. Now, this comes on top of the 18,000 job cuts, which Amazon had announced in November and in January. The move is part of the company's efforts to rein in costs as it deals with an economic downturn and slowing growth in its core retail business. Now, Disney is also expected to hand out pink slips to thousands of employees starting next week, which is going to include 15% of Disney's staff from the entertainment division, according to a report by Bloomberg. Now, Disney said in Feb that it planned to eliminate 7,000 positions from its workforce of more than 220,000 as part of an overall strategy to shave about $5.5 billion in annual costs. Now, in India, BNPL startup Simple also announced layoffs, which will affect about 25% of its workforce. Now, we understand that Simple laid off more than 150 employees again in a cost-cutting measure. In a letter to its employees, which we've seen a copy of, its founder CEO Nitya Sharma told employees the startup had to take corrective action as it overhired during the pandemic and was now faced with a slowing economic growth. Now, different companies, common script here for these massive cuts, citing the tough macro environment and a need to find economic discipline in a new economic reality.
Thanks, Joseph Singh, for joining us. The big global earnings now. Netflix reported a mixed bag in the March quarter. The company's revenue came below expectations, even as earnings per share met the street. This has prompted the company to delay the rollout of its password-sharing crackdown plan. The OTT giant's India engagement grew 30% year-on-year. CNBC's Julia Burstein joins us now to decode the numbers.
Netflix first plummeting by double-digit percentages before regaining most of those losses after the company reported mixed first-quarter results. Earnings per share beat expectations by 2 cents, but revenue fell short of analysts' expectations. That's despite better-than-expected subscriber growth. The streamer added 1.75 million subs rather than the less than 1.4 million analysts had anticipated. Netflix also guided to lower-than-expected second-quarter revenue and earnings than Wall Street projected. But on the upside, Netflix co-CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters saying that 2 key initiatives are doing well. Engagement with their ad-supported tier is above their initial expectations, and it's not cannibalizing their streaming business that doesn't have ads, saying, quote, "We continue to be pleased with our progress across all key dimensions: member experience, value to advertisers, and incremental contribution to our business." They also weighed in on their crackdown on password sharing, announcing plans to launch paid sharing worldwide, including in the U.S., in the second quarter, saying that delaying the launch will result in a better outcome and that the revenue benefit will fall in the third quarter rather than the second.
We're heading into a short break, but coming up, an exclusive interview with Israel's trade minister on India-Israel ties, FTA talks, and much more.
Blue, red, yellow. I'm a...
Chote. Install my investment and securities market are subject to market risk. Read all related documents carefully before investing.
Z-Black Premium Agarbatti and Dhoop, official prayer partner, Delhi Capitals.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Eye. In a bid to bolster ties between India and Israel, the two countries are looking to expedite the free trade agreement, which has been in the works for nearly a decade. The Israel trade minister will be holding talks, and he has also met Piyush Goyal to finalize the deal. I caught up with the minister earlier and began by asking him about the priorities for his India trip and the timeline for the FTA.
I actually am quite inspired by what I see here in India. As Minister of Economy and Industry in Israel, we're focusing on Israel's competitive advantage in the world and how do we expand our export and import and relationships with other countries. And we are a very technology-oriented country. However, we're tiny, so we seek big places around the world. We want to create more and more relationships with large economies. And I see that India is headed to be the third largest economy in the world. And the relationship between Israelis and Indians are really, really good. To remind you that in the last 2,000 years, Jews always felt comfortable and safe in India. And we Jews and Israelis have long memory. We know who our friends are. The people-to-people between the Indians and Israelis are really good. And the government-to-government between Netanyahu and Modi, they're really good relationships. Now we need to take that relationship to the next level. You are a large market, we're small. We are technology-oriented and entrepreneurial. You're scaling. And so that is a really, really good fit. And I'm inspired by the opportunities working together between Israel and India.
Give us a sense also of the status of the long-pending FTA talks. They have been going on for a long while now. During this visit, are you seeking a timeline within which you want to conclude negotiations and have a deal?
I'm going to be meeting with my peer here with the ministry. My goal is to expand the relationship. It's about business development deals. It's about seeking how to, naturally, to expand the free trade agreement. But it's way over and beyond that, because I believe that there are new opportunities into the future that we must see how to cooperate and create a win-win deal. See, we want to scale through export, and we're really interested in investments in Israel. And the more open we will be, the better life we will have, and similarly to the Indians. So there's no timeline. The goal is to do as much as we can, swiftly and quickly, because the people expect this from us. They expect it from the Indian government and from the Israeli government.
Right. So no timeline, but you'd like to do it as soon as possible.
Sure.
What are the sticking points, the hurdles to concluding those talks right now, according to you? Where are things stuck currently?
I think that we need to look at how do we help each other. There are certain things that India wants from Israel in terms of employment. There's certain things we want in terms of reducing the taxes and barriers to entry. We'll be discussing it today in the near future. There's no doubt in my mind that we will know how to work together, because the motivation and the goal and working together is actually in the best interest of both countries.
What is the status of discussions when it comes to semiconductors? India has come up with a semicon policy to incentivize semiconductor manufacturing in the country. Is there interest from Israeli companies?
Yes, very much so.
What is the level of interest? Are we going to see some MOUs being signed? Is there some development that you could share with us?
There's a geopolitical challenge in the world today. And some of the countries on the west side, the Western countries, understand that we have a challenge in supply chain management. And in order to solve this problem, we need to rely on stable countries that you can count on. Certainly Israel is a player in the Western world that people can count on, but so is India. And we have to solve this issue swiftly and quickly. We have knowledge in the electronics and in the chip industry. Israel's good at that. We need to figure out how to base new companies that provide solutions and the challenges to the geopolitical challenge. I think there's an opportunity. We have to resolve it. I think both countries, both Israel and India, understand that this is a new area that we need to supply ourselves, because we have no choice. We cannot rely on third parties and other countries. And so I believe you'll see some natural evolution in this field, and we'll have to get into it.
I would also like to ask you about the Adani-Hindenburg report fallout. This is a matter where the Supreme Court of India has ordered the setting up of a committee that will investigate the impact on Indian investors in great detail. Back in Israel, there are significant investments by the Adani Group in the Haifa port and in other areas. Are the investments being reviewed? Have you sought additional assurances from the Adani Group in light of this controversy?
No, we welcome all investments from foreign investors into Israel. I think that it's a testimony that we trust the Indian government and the Indian business people, we don't have a lot of ports. So having a port bought by an Indian company is a testimony that we trust the Indian economy and the Indian people. It's not our business what's happening here. We have no reason to do any research as things go well in Haifa port, and we welcome more investments in general. We're not part of this whole issue here.
Right. Recently, we have seen in Israel a large-scale protest over the judicial reforms being pushed by the government. They were seen as draconian by many activists. What is your view? Do you think they should have been pushed by the government, or they should be put on hold?
Well, I'm proud of our democracy. You know, in England, you see pro-Brexit and against Brexit. In America, you see sometimes Republicans and Democrats. You know, there's big differences of life. In Israel, practically the majority of people understand that we need changes and improvements in the judicial systems. And there's a controversy around it. That's fine. It's part of democracy. We'll overcome it. We'll resolve it. We have no choice but to resolve it. And we're a democracy. So people go out in the street, care about our country, and it's part of our life. It's not the first time there are demonstrations. It's probably not the last time. As an economy, the fact that we are a democracy, a strong democracy, and people feel, I see this as a pro, not as a pro. It's a feature. It's not a bug that we need to resolve. And the reality is that you saw Israel's economy is headed one way because of our talent and because of the quality of the entrepreneurs. We have over 70 unicorns, by far the largest in the U.S. And we know how to work globally. And that's not going to change. The quality of the people, the opportunities that we propose to the world is not going to change. And interestingly enough, look backwards in time. Everyone that invested in Israel won big time. So there may be ups and downs. I'm looking long term at where we're headed. Israel is a great place to invest in.
All right, that was Nir Barkat, the Economy and Trade Minister of Israel, speaking to CNBC-TV18. Let's move on to the other special report this evening. India is expected to pip China to become the world's most populous nation by mid-2023. As per the latest report by United Nations, India's population is estimated to reach nearly 1.43 billion people. The report also says that India and China could account for 1/3 of the world's total population. The UN report also highlights the phenomena of population anxiety, which it says has seeped into the minds of a majority of Indians. Archana Solanki joins us now. Archana, the United Nations laying emphasis on population anxiety.
Well, thank you for that. Well, are there too many people in the world? Are there too few people in the world? Is the population growing too fast or too slow? The UN report says that the world is asking all the wrong questions. The most important takeaway from the United Nations Population Fund report was its emphasis on population anxiety and how it is eroding women's rights. Now, population anxieties have seeped into many Indians, with about 63% of those surveyed identifying various economic issues as their top concern in terms of change in population. With 8 billion people on this planet, the UN report acknowledges that there are concerns around depleting resources, food needs, ability to invest in children, and stress on the environment. Whereas on the other hand, more and more countries are facing decreasing population, which is stoking worries of a declining workforce, a dependent, aging population, and stress on pension funds. The report also says that the governments are increasingly adopting policies aimed at raising, lowering, or maintaining fertility rates as a result of population anxiety. However, the growing number of population of people should not trigger anxiety or create an alarm. The UN report says that population anxiety will distract us from serious problems and deny the rights and bodily autonomy of women and girls. The burden of this anxiety largely falls on women. A staggering 44% of women and girls in 68 countries do not have the right to make informed decisions about their bodies when it comes to having sex, using contraception, and seeking health care. And an estimated 257 million women worldwide have an unmet need for safe, reliable contraception. The report asserts that women's bodies should not be held captive to population targets. The report strongly recommends that aging countries partner with young and high fertile countries to support economic migration. Policies like parental leave programs, child tax credits, policies that promote gender equality in the workplace, and universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Back to you.
All right, thanks Archana for joining us. India's second Apple store in Delhi Saket is all set to open its doors tomorrow. The store is situated at Select City Walk, and like Mumbai, it will also showcase all Apple products and experiences. Shubhani Gharat gives us a tour of the store ahead of its launch tomorrow. Take a look.
Delhi's first Apple store and country's second Apple store, Apple Saket, will open on April 20th. And there is a beautiful facade outside the store. In look and feel, it almost looks similar to the Mumbai store, which opened on April 18. But in terms of size and stature, this one is particularly very, very small as compared to the large store that we saw in Mumbai. But there are beautiful oak tables right in front of us that display all the Apple products that customers can come and experience. Another highlight of the store is that there is a pickup station right behind me, which is a dedicated pickup station that the Delhi Saket store will have right here, where you can order online and come and pick up your device right here. It will also house 70 employees, 70 of Apple employees who will in fact help customers make a choice, take them through the products, make them experience the products on display, let's say for example an iPhone 14 Pro, and they speak 15 languages. So of course, because of the size of the store, the number of people number of people who will be there in the store is also less. But again, it will feature some exclusive products which will be only available at the Apple store right here, like a range of like HomePods or AirPods or even AirTags, which typically is very difficult to find, let's say, at an Apple authorized reseller. Again, just like Mumbai has the Mumbai Rising, which is somewhat like the Today at Apple session, this store, which is the Apple Saket store, will also house that, which will have dedicated experts and creatives who will take customers through like different specialized skills that they can experience on their Apple device. So all of these things are available at the Apple Saket store, and it will open doors on April 20th.
So you can head to the Apple Saket store if you happen to be there in Select City Walk tomorrow. Let's also see if Tim Cook visits the Delhi store as well. With that, it's a wrap on our special edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.